people in these schools, they're feeling like they're the only one. And you will not know that you're not the only one unless you open your mouth. If we only train the body and not our emotions, then we create people, we create athletes, we create students who look strong, but they feel broken.
What's going on, you guys, and welcome to another amazing show of Behind the Door, where we actually speak and talk about those things that no one wants to talk about, especially in the sports culture, of things that leaders deal with, administrators, as well as the program managers, things that they deal with and they have to take in and carry those loads because no one wants to talk about them because the solely focus is really on the athletes. But on this channel, in this space, we really want to make sure your voice is heard, you are seen, and people understand the struggles that you're going through. But not only understand, but give you tips as well to how you can handle those struggles. So I'm so excited because I have my amazing sister on. I would say a prayer warrior, a mother, auntie, all these above with this amazing person. Dr. Princess, how are you?
I'm so good. Thank you so much
Yeah.
for inviting me to your podcast. We always have great conversations, and I'm so excited just to be here.
Awesome. So yeah, we're gonna get in and you already see that, she's pumped up and she excited. She has a wealth of knowledge and so much information. So I don't want to take time running my mouth. So I'm going to allow you just to introduce yourself and tell a little bit about what you do and then going in there and why you started doing some of the things that you do.
Okay. Well, hey, everybody. I'm Dr. Princess Millens. I am an emotional wellness strategist. I'm a resilience educator, an author, and I have 20 years in the classroom. I left the classroom, left the formal public education after 20 years in 2022. And so 20 years of supporting students in middle and high school, teaching mathematics, but I just teach in another classroom now with adult social emotional learning and emotional wellness, helping and supporting youth, families, and professionals with navigating stress and grief and all the things, burnout. I spent 2 decades in the classroom, and many of those years I was working directly with student athletes and coaches because the coaches were my colleagues. They were my coworkers. They taught as well, a lot of them. And then seeing firsthand the pressure that they carry on both on and off the field. And the thing that really brought me to this whole emotional wellness space is the loss of my only son. About 7 years ago now, I lost my son. He was 20 years old. He proudly served the U.S. Army. And just giving back, being able to go through grief hard. There's just one thing in my life that I went through and I had to grieve, but just kind of thinking about all the things that I've gone through with grief. Yes, I have experience, but I also have education as well. My doctorate is in Christian counseling, but I do have training in grief coaching and things like that, inner healing and things like that. So I bring a lot of things to the table as we talk about these things that affect not only us as parents or coaches or teachers or students, that could help and support a thriving community. So that's just a little bit about who I am and what I do.
Come on, experience and knowledge. Clock it. She ain't gave y'all all of it. Just like that. So as we continue to roll and provide more value to our listeners and also our audience, kind of, I think the biggest question is because, like you said, you was educated, you was in the education field on it. What you say overall, the importance of what is the importance of having social emotional learning and wellness, just in schools first, before we even get to the sports, because we want to break that down of just the importance of having that within the program environment of schools.
Yeah, it's emotional wellness is so important in schools, but uh, as for us as individuals as well. So we look at it in the context of school, but we look at it in the context of just being an individual and what I used to call and tell my students a productive member of society, right?
Mhm.
So we have to deal with and learn how to deal with the things and the emotions that we carry, but how do we take those emotions and the things that we have going on, and how do we deal with other people? How do we make responsible decisions? How do we do all of this? Because everything, sometimes we sometimes live in a bubble, I think. And I had to realize, and a lot of people realize, that we don't live in a bubble, and everything that we do, it'll probably affect somebody else. And so if we don't have our emotional wellness, our mental health in check, then it will begin to leak into other areas of our life. So that's why it's really important to be on top of that. It's a lot of information out there for students. I know when I was in the classroom, we used to get a whole lot of resources about social emotional learning, but it would be in the context of what do us as teachers do for the students in our classroom? What strategies can we use as teachers in the classroom? But it was never too much of anything that focused on the adults and social emotional learning and the parents or things like that. So it was really student focused, as it should be. But it's a village of people that are raising these students, right? That we need to be in check with our own social emotional learning. So I love this space.
I love it. And you write in there what we want to kind of explore more, and what we explore more on this actual behind the door is that, like you said, the people behind the scene, the doers, the teachers, the educators, the ones that are running around the school, making sure that these kids are being that productive student that we have. So we focus so much on them that we forget about the people that are teaching and providing care at a heavy load too. So
Yeah.
growing up in your tenure of just being in the workspace that you was in, that you see a lot of that where it was a hindrance to those teachers, educators, and etc. and sports leaders, because they wasn't provided the education as well.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you can see it on both sides because, if we as adults are not in tune with our own social and emotional learning, it's really difficult for us to teach somebody else. How do we teach something that we don't know and have not mastered ourselves? So in the classroom, I was a math teacher, right? So in the classroom, we've mastered our subject area, right? But we have not mastered that emotional learning or the emotional wellness that we need. Well, Princess, how did that look? That looks like I'm dealing with something, right? Like my son passed away, and I remember when I went back to school, right? And so when I go back to school, obviously was in grief,
Mhm.
but I know that I could not allow that to push out on anybody else. So sometimes we are going through things as adults in our life. We're going through this, that, and the other. We're going through divorces. Our parents are sick, whatever the case is, right? And then we'll come to the classroom, we'll take it out on the kids. And even with us as being parents, we'll do the same thing. We're going through things, the bills ain't being paid, and we're worried about our marriage, whatever the case is. And we'll take it out on the children because we can't deal effectively with our own emotions.
Mhm.
And so it tends to bleed out, intentionally or unintentionally most of the time, but it tends to bleed out. And so we kind of have to make sure that we are doing it so that we don't create damage where it doesn't need to be damaged there.
I love what you said. Like you said, uh, mastered the education, but not your
Mhm.
emotions. Like that statement
Exactly.
right there was just so profound, because so many people have mastered what they are or seem to be great at, and that are they doing things. but they don't master the things that's going to help them to continue to do
Yeah,
those things. And that's
absolutely. Mhm.
understanding themselves emotionally on that. And when you said
Yeah,
about how teachers are going through different things, and now that I'm older and I'm studying these things now and have went through those things, I can remember when my coaches would come in mad and angry. I had one particular coach, and I always say anytime I do this, he end up knowing who he is because he's head leader of the refs now. But me and him got into my 11th grade year, and that was like so detrimental to me because I stopped playing sports at that time because I got kicked off the team because he was so emotionally aware of what was going on in his household that he threw a
yeah.
chair across the court.
Oh, wow.
And
Mhm.
I'm a very respectful young lady, been like that for years. I'm one of them old schools that when you know my last name in certain areas of the country, they're gonna say, okay, she's the best kid because how we was raised. But that day I was just fed up because it was constantly cussing for him. He also had
Yeah.
always had something negative to say. So I threw the chair back. I did. I
Mhm.
proudly did it too, and I still talk about it now because it was so much hurt and
Yeah,
as athletes, especially female
absolutely.
athletes, taking our time. Already been talked about the worst in the schools, and we're there. And now we got a coach that is not only seen
Mhm.
as a coach, but a man that is a leader. For many of us, it was a father. For many of us, it was a mentor, and he did that. And me being a leader,
Mhm.
I was able to express my emotions too, but in also a redirect negative way, which comes back
Yeah,
to emotional intelligence and understanding that you have to be able to control your emotions and manage yours and those around you. But going back to him, his wife was
yeah,
amazing, bless her heart. She was an amazing lady. Yes, they're not together no more. And it was because of during that time they was going through so much. And I was blessed with this young
mhm.
lady that she was able to come to us and come to me after I got off and said, you didn't need to be on a team, Erica, at a place where a man did not respect you as a person nor as
Mm.
an athlete. And she said,
Wow.
I am praying for all you young ladies because you need to be respected
Yeah,
more. So to have a wife to say this to young girls in 10th and 11th grade, he had a lot of stuff
yeah,
going on at home, and there's nothing to be
yeah,
eyes to men. So I know men gonna be on here watching, but he had a lot going on
mhm,
at home with his wife. So now you come
yeah,
to a school environment actually teaching and coaching girls, and you want them to act and sit a certain way because the act and sit is not going on at home.
right,
It was time for him
exactly.
to actually handle his. No, go ahead, please,
Mhm.
please add on to that.
No, no, I was just saying, that goes to show and it proves that, when your emotional intelligence or your emotional wellness not in check, these are the things, these are the symptoms. Yeah, these are we are responding to we're seeing the symptoms of it, right? Even though we might not physically know what's going on in that person's life, we see the symptoms of it: the throwing of the chair, the cussing you out, the the putting you out of your classroom or
Mhm.
sending you to the principal's office, whatever the case is. If it's a parent, you're screaming at them, you're telling them certain things that are hurtful and things like that. So, you know, um, we see the symptoms of it, but a lot of times we don't know the root cause of it.
Yeah. And that is the biggest thing, getting to the root
Yeah.
cause and why we want to pivot to, since we're talking about sports, do you believe that an aspect of what we're talking about in this emotional space needs to be more of a priority within sports? Especially since you was able to be right around student athletes.
Mhm. Mhm. I was around a lot of the students athletes. Matter of fact, I was very adamant about knowing my students, right? And I will always tell them at the beginning of the school year, look, give me 2 weeks to learn your names. If I ask you your name, just give me about 2 weeks, right? But um I've seen it. I had and through learning my students, I knew who the athletes were. I knew who the cheerleaders were. I knew who the people was on the dance team. I knew them. And so but I also did realize that as working with student athletes in my classroom, that they cared a lot in on and off the field, right? And what I realized is that, you know, uh it performance pressure, that's what I want to say, right? The pressure to perform versus emotional wellness, because there's pressure. It's pressure on them to win the game. It's pressure on them to do this and the other. And sometimes we focus so much on the physical performance that we overlook the silent stress that they have, the burnout of the student athlete, and I think behind every jersey is just a kid carrying expectations. They're carrying expectations from the coaches, from the parents, from the teacher, and even from themselves. They want to be on the field and they want to do a good job. You know what I'm saying? So, I remember I had students that they half wouldn't eat or sleep because they wanted they wanted to be so good in their performance. It was not necessarily a healthy thing. It was something like anxiety. And
Yeah.
so we have to create a culture, right, where checking in with our student athletes is normal, because it's just as important as them warming up. Like I've never been an athlete, but you know how y'all warm up on the field. You do
Yes,
your
ma'am.
warm up exercises, right? So checking in with your athletes should be just that normal. And so that's one of the strategies that we learned to give to the students, even in our own classroom. Check in with your students. How you doing? You're not just in there to teach math. You're in there to teach them about life. So it's a blend of performance. Yes, I want you to do good on my math test, but I also want you to do good in life. Right. So yeah,
Well,
I saw a little bit of it all. A little bit of it all, I
I
think.
will be taking that. And I love quotes, big on affirmation and quotes. So have you did your warm up for the day? I'm gonna be taking that. So just so you know, Dr. Prince is on it because I love that analogy. Like you said, we do
Yes.
everything else, but when do we take the
Mhm.
time to warm up emotionally and mentally as we do physically and making sure those things are working mechanically? And I know, like you said, playing sports, that was our biggest thing. The coach will holler, why you ain't warmed up? Y'all ain't got in line yet. You ain't stretched yet. That would be the main thing. They want that over and done before they even walk in the gym. But what if we took
Yeah.
time to say, you warmed up, but how was that warm up emotionally before we start this practice? How's your warm up
Absolutely.
mentally before we start that practice? Are you in the right
Mhm.
head space after you warmed up to be able to even perform on the floor? That would
Yeah.
be so amazing. And as we talk to the
Yeah.
coaches too, the coaches saying to themselves and to their self, hey bruh, hey sis, have you warmed up today? Have you checked in on
Mhm.
you? Have you stretched
Yeah.
today mentally and emotionally
Mhm.
to be able to gear these youth to where they need to be? And it's
Yeah.
not just like you said, going back to just a performance. It's just being a human and like bringing those
Yeah.
strategies and aspects to make you a better person than everybody else around you. I had my last guest, and you know him, Jay Mosley. Shout out to Jay Mosley. He was on here.
Jay.
He talked about you good, bro. And he pushed for the male coaches on understanding that you gotta take that S off your chest, that you can't be Superman all the time. You gotta be
Come
willing
on.
to step back and ask yourself, am I
Mhm.
okay? So that's
Yes.
emotionally, mentally for those actual teachers and actually coaches too as well. All those leaders that are on the backfield, as we say, that are leading, but put it on the backside because of the students. I
Come on.
always say, students, we know it's great. We push that, but we
Yeah.
got to make sure these leaders are also well too. So going
Yeah.
into that, we talked about that also of how they are overwhelmed and they got a lot going on. So I kind of want to
Mm.
transition to help sports leaders understand that also what they're
Yeah.
doing can be a part of grief because you
Come
was
on.
all about grief. And as we talk
Yeah.
about grief, kind of getting from the aspect of grief can be from the retirement of the coaches. Grief can be
Come
now
on.
the biggest thing, the transfer portal. That is grief for a lot of coaches and sports leaders because they may not have a job in the next couple of minutes. Hey, I'm a big
Come
time
on.
fan, but we know what Alabama just did. They already talking about a buyout of $70 million for this man. He's gonna get some money if he
Come
get a
on.
buyout from coaching Alabama sports. But the grief of his parents that they're gonna go through all the animosity about him not being a great
Yeah.
coach. We talking about the grief of having students transfer that you actually once thought it was a family member or someone that you
Come
love.
on.
Now they're going to another actual team. So if you can speak on that part, I really want to hone in on how grief can show up in the sports culture too.
Yeah, that's so good because I always teach that grief is more than just the death of a loved one. It's much more. It is the state of sadness that you go through because of a loss. Okay, so the loss can be anything. It's just not the death of a loved one. It could be anything. You know, I went through grief. Yes, of course, when my son passed away, both my parents passed away. I had grief. When I went through a divorce, I had grief. Right, and all of that affected how I showed up in the classroom as well. When I went through health challenges about 3 years ago, I was in a state of grief because you know I was getting to where I was getting less and less independent and had to depend on other people to do things for me. So grief can show up in a whole lot of ways, right? For us as adults, right? It can show up as far as some of the other things that we've just said. You know, the anger, the sadness. You will see things like that, but also we have to also recognize that grief is really real for students too. Really real for students too. You know, sometimes we leave the kids out and think that they're invincible and nothing affects them. But I don't care how they act. I'm telling you that grief is real for them. And we have to make sure that we identify and understand that it does, because nobody teaches them how to handle that emotional part of them.
Right.
So it can be, anything, just a loss of identity, the things that, like when players are injured, right? And they have to sit on the bench when they get cut, you know. As you stated before, even when coaches, right, they know that they need to hand the reins over to somebody else, or they about to retire or things like that. Everybody wants to live in the season that was so good to them, and when things are good for you and when it's good to you, you never think about that this thing one day gonna end.
Mhm.
And so, you know, as coaches, as parents, as teachers, right, we need to normalize, I believe, um, emotional setbacks, and help our students to support it, not just push them to tough it out. Don't push them, especially boys, right? Don't push them to just tough it out. Teach them how to deal with it. However you deal with it, it needs to be in a healthy way. And whatever those strategies are, sometimes it's gonna be positive self-talk. You need to talk to yourself on a daily basis. Say, Princess, you can do this thing now. You don't have to check out. I know this thing hurts and you don't want to be on the bench. And I know you tore your ACL. I know whatever it is, but you're going to get back on the field again. Something else is going to come. If I'm a retiring coach, something else is going to come up. And I'm going to be led to do whatever I need to do, because we're always working for our next season.
Mm.
We're always working for our next season, you know.
Uh,
So I know I ain't trying to preach and then like that,
Come on,
but
bring it.
you know, God always tells us, right? Or he shows us, he allows us to work in an area where we think we just doing stuff. We just doing stuff. This is just something that I know how to do. But nobody knew, probably Coach P did not know that one day she gonna have this podcast and she's gonna be teaching in an area where it's gonna support coaches, parents, and students in their emotional and mental health. Because when we go to college, you went to college for psychology and all this kind of stuff, right? And we thought we had a path to go down. But look at us now, right? Look at us now.
Yes.
So I just believe that we're always working for our next season, and we'll know when we get into the next season, we'll know, oh, that's why we had to do XYZ. That's why we were mentoring those people. you know. That's why the kids would always gravitate to me, when I was trying to just have peace in my planning period. This is why they always felt comfortable talking to me when I would check in with them, because I'm telling you, you give the students a chance to check in, they're going to tell you the truth. They're going to tell you, what, Miss Millens, I'm having a hard time. Or they'll say something to let you know that they're really struggling.
Mm-hmm.
So the goal is to understand that grief shows up in a lot of ways, and we all deal with it. We all deal with it. And a lot of times we only see the symptoms. But even when we see the symptoms of it, we have to understand that we have to teach ourselves as well as our student athletes, how to be emotionally well. And that stems from, we are emotionally well ourselves.
You gotta be
We got to
yourself.
first. In the airplane, they said put your oxygen mask on first and then put it on somebody else. Put it on your child or whoever can't do it. So with emotional wellness for ourselves, for as adults, it's like putting our oxygen mask on first,
And making sure you are
and
well
then we
first
can
before
help.
you help others.
Yeah.
Yes. And that's going to go into the next thing on. As you guys know, when y'all see me, I be down there writing everything because I take notes. I don't just have people or guests to come on and just say, oh, it was cute. It's all about retaining information that's going to help you become a better person and better and well. As I say, I'm always a student, I'm always an athlete, and I'm always a teacher. So I'm always blending all those different things in because everything lead to a different season or a different area, as you just mentioned. Everything that we do, everything that we're gaining is helping us for that next season. I love what you said there because, like you said, sports. I didn't see it then.
Yeah.
My small tail thought I was going to be in the WNBA. But God said, no, you went through all this, the pain, the heartache, and the coaching so I can bring you to this platform so you can be able to speak
Oh,
to others that are going and struggling through the same thing that you're going through. Because I know
yeah.
there's several coaches now that I've reached out, and coaches and sports leaders, when you see this, please comment, please DM me, that I've reached out and asked, hey, could you just come on and just give me a couple of minutes just to talk about some things that you're doing so you can heal and help other coaches. And
Yeah.
I've had coaches say, no, I can't do it because if I do that and my school see it, I may not have a job. Or I had male coaches said, if I do that and my school see it, then my staff is going to see me less than a man because I'm talking about my feelings or emotion. And that's what we
And
have to
that is
change
a
that
whole
culture.
nother, that's a whole nother podcast.
Come on. And I want to go into that because it's going to lead into the questions of asking you too, Princess, what happens when that leader is depleted and grieving emotionally and overwhelmed, but they're still trying to lead? What happens?
Mm. Oh, that's a difficult place. That's a very difficult place. I have been blessed over my 20 years, right? I've been so blessed that I had leaders that, I could go in their office and I could talk to them. I could pretty much let them know what was going on, and they understood. You know what I'm saying? I never had a school leader. Thank you, Jesus. I never had a school leader that, even if they didn't necessarily understand or have not gone through what I've gone through, they were understanding, at least if I went in there and said, look, I need a couple of days off or something like that. And they would approve it. They would give me time off and things like that. But that's a hard place to be able to lead, because even as teachers in our own classroom, we are leaders. We are leaders in our own classroom. We are leaders on the field as coaches. We are leaders as parents in our own home. We are leaders as principals in our school. So, students are leaders as well, on their teams, you know? So, we it's a hard place to be able to lead when you are grieving or when you have burnout, when you are not doing emotionally well yourself, right? But what I know is that, number one, you cannot be afraid to be emotional. You cannot be afraid to be emotional.
Right.
What I mean by that is you cannot be afraid to step into the realm of transparency, because it's the leadership, it's the transparency in the leadership that's going to cause other people to take hold of what you're going through
Mm-hmm.
and understand that's a me too situation.
Yeah.
So, I know we had something was going on. I can't remember what it was, but we had the hashtag going on, me too, right? Me too. It's a lot of us that are me too's. Me too. My child died as well. Me too. I am struggling in my classroom and I feel like nobody understand. Me too. My marriage is going left and I'm trying to hold it together for my kids. Me too. I'm trying to do the best that I can in school and on the field, but I feel like my parents don't understand. Me too. Right? So it can affect all of us different ways, but as leaders, um in whatever we are called to lead as parents, coaches, teachers, or leaders in the school, we cannot overlook or be ashamed or be afraid of transparency.
Yes.
That don't mean that you have to tell everybody play by play. It doesn't mean that. But what it does mean that you're transparent enough that other people around you will say, me too. I thought I was the only one. Have you ever gone through that, Coach P, that you're going through something, you feel like it feels like you're the only one.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of people in these schools, they're feeling like they're the only one. And you will not know that you're not the only one unless you open your mouth.
Come on.
And
That's,
so your testimony of what you're going through, or what you have went through, right? Just like you testified about the fact of how, all of these things that happen in your life has brought you to this point. And
mm-hmm.
now you're out here teaching and encouraging other people as they are going through it, right?
Yeah.
It's the same thing for us. We have to be just as transparent with what we are going through and our struggles so that other people can understand and know that there's a way out. It's a way out and we can get through this. And then guess what that does? Not only that does that show our coworkers and our fellow parents and all this kind of stuff, but it also shows our kids.
Yes.
We wonder why our kids are so bottled up and they don't ever want to tell us nothing and all that kind of stuff, because we don't never want to tell nothing.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I'm saying? We always want to keep stuff to ourselves, but we want them to be so transparent. No, it don't work like that.
We got to be able to speak up
So
as well.
yeah, so they're gonna feel comfortable. So I feel for those teachers though who feel like they can't do it because they're gonna lose their job.
Mm-hmm. And it's
I
a
feel
sad
for that.
situation. And it goes to the part of still around the part of grief, because it's you're grieving inside of something that you really admire but you can't speak on. And as we say,
Yeah,
leaders, like you said, leaders must talk about these things to be able to educate our students. But as leaders,
yeah,
sometimes get miscrewed of the word mean leader mean I have to be tough all the time. It's not
yeah,
about all being tough. And
yeah,
I want to, as we start to kind of wrap up of taking this in the leadership part and having you to answer this question and kind of dissect it, as I've heard people always say, strong but unaffected, of kind of that myth, especially when it comes to grief or in leadership. Oh, they look real strong, so I didn't think they was affected by what was going on.
right,
Oh, they looked real strong,
right.
I didn't see them crying. So kind of
Uh-huh.
explaining, just because a person is strong, and to that leader that are looking at this, just because you're strong doesn't mean that you should not walk around and tell people you're not affected by what's going on with you.
Mhm, mhm, mhm. I think a large part of that in our communities is learned behavior. So, somewhere, somehow, and a lot of times in our communities, we have been taught that we can't show emotion, especially men and boys, right? When they grow up, don't cry, stop that crying, boys don't cry and things like that. And even on the girls, we've been taught that we always have to appear so strong, right? And some of that is learned directly or indirectly, right? We saw our mothers, we saw our parents handle a certain thing a certain way. And we kind of indirectly learn that, hey, when things are going on, I don't have to be, I have to show that I'm not affected.
Right.
But that's the great myth. That's the great myth. Because I'm telling you one thing, people might not see it on your face, but I guarantee you, grief, burnout, stress, all of that is going to affect every area of your life.
Mm,
If you are working, it's going to affect your productivity. You're not going to be as effective or not. You'll go to school, you'll clock in, but you're not going to be as effective as you used to be. If you are running a business, I guarantee you'll seem so strong and successful to everybody, but I guarantee you're going to lose some money,
yeah.
because it's going to affect how you reach out and how you secure your contracts and send out proposals, things like that, you know? So it's going to affect every area of your life, even finances. People not going to talk about this, but it's going to affect how you go and spend your money.
Yeah.
Because if you're trying to make yourself feel better because you're dying on the inside, but you feel like you got to smile all the time, you're going to go out and start purchasing stuff.
Make you
you
feel
gonna
good.
you gonna you gonna go and buy cars, and you're gonna spend large sums of money. You're gonna go buy the Gucci watch and all this kind of stuff because you're trying to mask the pain. But I just believe that
Um,
you don't have to be strong. You can make sure that you can unlearn that behavior, the same behavior that I said that we learn directly, indirectly. A lot of us have to unlearn now.
yes.
We got to unlearn the behaviors. And how we unlearn the behaviors is that we got to fix our thinking. It all starts with a thought. Our behaviors, our actions, it all starts with a thought. And if we're not in control of our thoughts and make sure that we're thinking positively on different things, right? Then, you know, I think that's the start of it. So we got to think better. We got to think better. We got to think better on how we handle things, and how it's going to affect the people in my life.
Most definitely. Learn behavior, learn better. And the last thing, as we wrap up, one of the things that I would like to ask, as I ask everybody that come on, what is one play that you would like to lead the audience with? One play that can help lead them to success in the sports culture as it relates to the things that we're talking about, to help them when it comes to grieving, or to just help them become better emotionally as a person.
Yeah. I think this kind of fits everybody: coaches, students, parents, teachers, leaders. Um, it's like how we train. So this athlete's scenario. If we only train the body and not our emotions, then we create people, we create athletes, we create students who look strong, but they feel broken. So going back to what we just said, we look strong, but we feel broken.
Mm-hmm.
And so burnout, grief, stress, all of that, it doesn't always show up on the scoreboard, y'all. It don't always show. It shows up in the silence. It shows up in the stress, in the self-doubt, in the negative self-talk. It shows up in the tears. It shows up even in when you trying to be strong for everybody. So I just want to make sure that I encourage everybody to, understand that ignoring your emotions and how to build your own emotional regulation and your build your own resilience. That's pretty much what you want to do. Is just knowing how to manage them. How to manage them. How do we deal with other people with our emotions, and how do we make responsible decisions in our emotions? So I just encourage everybody to, make sure that you understand that emotional intelligence is not just for the other person. It's for us too. It's for us first. So I'm encouraging you to put your oxygen mask on first and then give oxygen to somebody else.
Me too. Let's go. I love it. Thank you so much, Dr. Princess. If you
Absolutely.
guys didn't get a full, just everything on it, from going from the grief to the emotions and just how it's twined all together and understanding, then I want you to go back and rewatch this again, because that was the main focus for you guys to be able to really understand that it's not just you, it's other people around you, and how this can affect the whole if you're not working on you. So take that warm up for you, as Doc said early on. Make sure you're warming up yourself so that you are able to be better when it comes to any obstacle that you're going to face, because life is going to happen. It's going to happen. It has to happen.
Yeah.
But in between that time, we want to make sure that you are warmed up each and every day when those things happen. But as always, you guys, it is your girl, Coach Perry. I thank you guys for coming on and just watching this show and being a blessing. And I want you to always don't forget to check in on you. But as you check in on you, I want you to think about Dr. Princess by actually contacting her when you're going through some of these things as well. So drop your contact. How can they contact you? How can they speak with you?
Well, they can come to my website at princessmillens.com, or they can follow me on all social media at Dr. Princess Millens.
That's it. Simple as that. I will have that information drop down as well. But until the next time, you guys have a good one and be the best doer that you can be. See y'all on the next one.